Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ben Goertzel. Now, you've dedicated the last 4 years of your professional life to grow the work of the SingularityNET Foundation. Can you tell us a bit more about what has been achieved and how the SingularityNET marketplace works?
Sure. I've spent the last 30 plus years of my life working on artificial intelligence in various forms and applying AI in various vertical markets and working toward artificial general intelligence as sort of the grand goal of the AI field. And there's a lot of different issues that come up when you're trying to build an AI system, right? I mean, there's what are the core cognitive algorithms, what knowledge is it using, what are the ethics and goals and motivations of the AI system. But one of the key issues is sort of governance of the AI system, like who owns that AI system, who controls that AI system, who is driving its motivation, who's giving it resources. And this question is what led me ultimately to co-found SingularityNet. It seemed like the way the world was going was, AI started with a few large national militaries providing all the AI funding. Now it had shifted to, a half dozen to a dozen huge multinational corporations controlling all the AI. It's like that's not how things should be. That's not what's for the greatest benefit of humanity. And that's not what's going to lead us to, a beneficial technological singularity, whereas when AIs overtake people in some senses, they're being so compassionate and benevolent to people. Like we want the control and the governance of the global AI network as it comes to dominate more and more of the global economy and move toward general intelligence. We want this to be democratically controlled, and you want it to be decentralized, so it's not easy for any party to take over and use for their own narrow ends. And blockchain is the right tool for that. I mean, just like Bitcoin and Ethereum are sort of decentralized money, and smart contracts allow, decentralized software networks to run on a decentralized global computer. AI can run on that same sort of framework where you have a blockchain-based decentralized infrastructure for AI. So you have a global AI system with pieces running in a lot of different places. And the collective activity of all these decentralized AI agents is the overall intelligence of the network. And, this is a big, crazy vision. It takes some time to bring such visions into reality. But since we founded SingularityNet project in 2017 and did an initial token sale right around the start of 2018, and when we've launched a beta version of the SingularityNet marketplace, so there's now a network of AIs that are communicating via blockchain in a purely decentralized coordination mechanism. And, these AIs on the network now do various things, including, natural language processing, vision processing, some music processing. Some people made a song splitter app that backends on the network that takes a song and splits it into different tracks, some genomics and medical AI analysis. I mean, it's just getting started. There's dozens of things, not hundreds of thousands of things running on there now. But the decentralized blockchain-based infrastructure, it works. And now really the tasks are use it to work toward greater and greater levels of sort of emergent general intelligence and build traction among AI developers and AI product users who want to make their products access the AIs on the network on the back end, build that traction so there's a broader and broader community building stuff on there. And that really goes in a whole bunch of different directions, right? Like right now, the SingularityNet Foundation, which is the organization that launched and began the building of the SingularityNet, is spinning off a bunch of different projects as sort of autonomous organizations on their own that are building stuff on the platform. And there's a project called Rejuve, which is using SingularityNet-based AI for longevity biology, for understanding how to make people live longer. There's NewNet, which is a tokenized marketplace for processing power, which is sort of trying to democratize how do you get the processing power underlying the AI. There's a project called Accelerando, which is AI generated media running on SingularityNET platform. And we're also looking in the decentralized finance space and should have some interesting announcements there, because to make DeFi really work, you need AI sort of greasing things at multiple levels of all the, the DeFi layer cake. So I think having the platform out there now the challenge is, okay, you can make decentralized AI network. It exists. Now, what do we use it for, and how do we get others to leverage this resource?
So can you speak a little bit about sort of the democracy part of that? You're saying that that was a big part of that network. So yeah, how does that work?
With a traditional centralized AI architecture, what you have is something like, Google Cloud AI services. So Google is hosting a bunch of data, and they're hosting a bunch of AI processes. And if you want to use them, you make an API call into Google servers. And if a third party wants to offer AI through, say, a Google or Amazon based marketplace, the third party is putting their code on Google or Amazon servers, and then it can be accessed by people who want to use the Google or Amazon APIs. And that can work. It has a lot of practical advantages because these companies are really good at operating massively scalable server farms, right? On the other hand, the big company is always in control. And we saw with Facebook a lot of pathological things happen there, right? Like Zynga, the game company, pretty much got killed because they were offering games through Facebook plugins, and then Facebook changed their business terms because they wanted to take over that market, right? And so you have these big corporations, they're willing to operate marketplaces, and they're willing to connect third parties with users. But on the other hand, when what the third parties are doing, what the little guys are doing conflicts with the big guys' business model, then too bad, right? I mean, it's just like apps on the Apple App Store. It's great unless you're making an app that conflicts with something Apple wants to do. Then Apple may change the API structure so only their own apps can access certain functions of the operating system, and third-party apps can't do it, right? So if you want to avoid that sort of problem, let alone bigger problems of like Donald Trump or some other fascist or would-be fascist trying to control what AI you can offer based on what country you're from or something, right? If you want to avoid all these pathologies, what you need is something that's structured more like the internet or BitTorrent or Linux, right? I mean, these are three very different examples: the internet, Linux, and BitTorrent. These are three very different examples of decentralized systems which no one party owns and controls. So like Iran and North Korea are on the internet, right? And they're using Linux in their servers, and they're uploading and downloading files using BitTorrent and other peer-to-peer file sharing systems. And why does this work? Well, these are open source codes, so they're not strictly owned by anyone. And they're networks of software entities that are talking to each other and communicating with each other by certain protocols. But there's no one guy who is in practice or in the eyes of the law responsible for that whole network, right? And SingularityNET operates that way. So I mean, if you have one AI doing language processing over here, one AI doing optimization over here, one AI analyzing images, one doing abstract reasoning, they can all be running on different servers. They can be written by different people. They're talking to each other about the SingularityNET decentralized protocol. And if some police agency wants to shut that network down, there's no one to arrest. There's no office to go to. And if some company wants to buy out all those AI agents, well, they're all owned by different people, right? I mean, a big company could try to buy all the AGI tokens, which is the cryptographic token used for payment in the network. But then, of course, if there was some really pathological attempt to take that over, all the parties in the network could just fork and go to a different smart contract, right? As which is not good, and we don't want it to happen. But the potential for that serves as a certain control mechanism, right? So I mean, there's protection against military and government takeover. There's protection against commercial buyout, and there's also a sort of evolutionary force toward diversity, right? Because which brings a certain resilience and robustness, because there's no corporate office deciding what the focus is and what can be offered or what can't be offered, or what to filter out or what to allow. I mean, it's up to the whole community. So much of the democracy is just in the design, in doing things via a communication and coordination protocol rather than an overarching framework that everything has to run inside. Then there's explicit democratic governance as well, wherein the community the community of token holders, people who hold the AGI token, which is used for payment within the network, the community of token holders has to vote on any major changes to the operation of the network, or major upgrades or anything. So there's an explicit democratic process, but I think the decentralized infrastructure is just as important, right? Because having an explicit democratic process in the wrong structure doesn't guarantee that you have practical democracy.
So going back to SingularityNet, what are some of your favorite AI services that are currently on SingularityNet's AI platform? Are there any upcoming AI services that you're excited to release in the near future?
The stuff that I personally use most is the stuff that's genomics and bioinformatics related, because I'm actively involved in doing genomics research. So I mean, if we run our AI tools on DNA data, so we're looking at DNA data from people aged 105 or over versus younger people. If your AI finds some combination of genes that seem important, say for helping you live a long time, we have a gene annotation service on SingularityNet platform, which lets you see, like, what do those genes relate to, what biological processes, what pathways, like, and so why did those genes pop up in the machine learning algorithms results. So I actually use that as part of my process for analyzing genomic data to give context to the results of the machine learning DNA analysis. The other thing, because I'm sort of a musical hobbyist, like a weekend musician, I was psyched about the Song Splitter app, which is we really built that just to demonstrate the Android SDK for SingularityNet platform, which lets you build Android apps with SingularityNet agents in them. But so we built an app that takes a song and lets you split out different tracks. Like you can split out the vocal track or the drum and bass track or something. And I mean, that's, there's open source code that does that, but it's command line and sort of awkward to use. There's been nothing that does that sort of in a easy to use free app. So you can like strip out the vocals and put it in your TikTok video or something. So that was sort of interesting, just because it's like a direct to consumer end user thing running directly on the platform, right? Because most of the stuff running on the platform is APIs that would be used inside someone else's software product on the back end. Like you may have a document summarizer agent, and that's cool. Not that many people are going to be like uploading a newspaper article and asking for a summary. But I mean, if you're making a news website, right, then you can feed articles to that summarization API and get back a summary. So most of the stuff on there is sort of API marketplace oriented, where the customer is some other product that needs AI on its back end. The Song Splitter was cool because it's a consumer app that directly calls SingularityNet on the back end. And we're hoping that will be a sort of template others can use to build their own consumer apps that are hitting SingularityNET network on the back end. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff in the works. Certainly, I think a couple apps that are exciting to me are the Rejuve apps being launched by Rejuve, which is a separate company spun off by SingularityNet. So quite soon we're going to launch the Rejuve COVID app, and this is aimed at Apple Watch wearers with a new Apple Watch, which does pulse oximetry and heart rate variability measurement. So what we can do there, we can use some AI-based signal processing and anomaly detection on these biosignals coming out of the Apple Watch. And we can identify a few days in advance if you may have an infection. So we can do pre-symptomatic infection detection. So you may have COVID, you may have flu or something, and you can see that even before you feel sick because of perturbations in the biosignals measured by the Apple Watch. So we're first launching that app aimed at people who just want to have an early warning if they may have an infection, they can get a COVID test or something. And then the next release of that app will be focused on longevity rather than COVID. So including the COVID functions, but also additional longevity functions. And the point there will be, you want not only not to die of COVID, but if you're like me, you also want to live as long as possible. I'd like to live 1 billion years or live till the end of the universe and tunnel through the big crunch to the next universe, right? But if you die in 10 years of heart failure or something, you're not going to get there. You're not even going to live to 100. So the question is, what can you tell from your lifestyle, from your diet, from your exercise routine, and from biosignals gathered from, say, Apple Watch or Fitbit? What can you tell about, where you stand now in terms of your personal longevity and what you can do to optimize your routine toward personal longevity? And so these are apps with a very specific function. They're end user oriented apps, but all the AI is done via AIs running on the back end on the SingularityNET decentralized platform. So I'm psyched about those, both because I'm a longevity enthusiast, so they're cool to me, but also again, these are like direct to consumer stuff from the platform. But I mean, the diversity of this is really quite exciting and is one of the strengths. Like we've been playing around and prototyping stuff in the decentralized finance space, and we'll have some interesting announcements to make there soon. There you're looking at, say, AI agents running a SingularityNET platform that do predictive market making on decentralized exchanges. So say you have a utility token with moderate rather than huge liquidity, and you want to make a market for that on Uniswap or other dexes, can you tell in advance when that's going to be necessary rather than just slowly doing it after the fact? And that's the opposite of direct to consumer, right? That's like deep on the back end where the APIs of SingularityNet are called by bots acting on dexes, but it's deep in the guts of the DeFi economy. So I think we can do things at multiple levels. And then with the Singularity Studio, which is another spinoff of SingularityNet, that's working on enterprise AI applications. So there you have a big company that needs AI done, and they make their own sort of internal corporate IT systems, make calls into SingularityNet platform to meet their needs. So for example, in a certain Middle Eastern country, Singularity Studio is building a system that's managing some types of waste disposal, right? So that's not as sexy as DeFi or living a long time, but it's got to be done. And you can use blockchain. You can use blockchain to track the movement of waste to be sure that it's dumped in the right place. And then you can use AI to optimize the processes of waste management to maximize health and minimize cost. That's again a use on the back end of some government / corporate IT system. So we've we've got a whole spectrum of applications going on, ranging from end user to crypto world to traditional corporate and government IT. Of course, what's happening in the decentralized AI sphere is still a teeny tiny fraction of the global AI industry, which is rapidly overtaking the whole global economy, right? So, I mean, our goal is to make it so that, say, 5 years from now, the decentralized AI economy is at least like a non-trivial fraction of the overall global AI economy. And I think that can make a tremendous difference in many different ways. I mean, just as the fact that Linux is out there is, even though it's not 100% of the OS market, and you have Apple OSs and Microsoft OSs out there, the fact that Linux is out there makes a tremendous difference, because there's this open source alternative, and that constrains the behavior of the proprietary commercial actors. And I think we need that dynamic in the AI space, where the decentralized ecosystem is a major factor to be reckoned with. That it can do good on its own, and it also will force the major commercial and government actors to play a better game.
All right, so switching gears a little bit, can you tell us about the foundation's recent partnership with Cardano?
So, we launched SingularityNET platform on the Ethereum blockchain because it was kind of the only way to do it at that point in time in late 2017, right? I mean, Ethereum didn't invent the idea of smart contracts, but they were the first to deploy a smart contract platform that was reasonably easy to use, right? And so that was amazing. I mean, if you look in 2001, I wrote a book, Creating Internet Intelligence, where I was laying out something very much like a smart contract platform and how you would use it to make a global decentralized AI. And others were formulating this back in the 1960s even, right? But Ethereum made it happen. Like, they made a smart contract language so you could actually set up secure decentralized software applications. It is very cool. I mean, we knew at the time, 2017, when we started SingularityNet, that Ethereum was too slow and too expensive to really serve as the infrastructure of an intelligent global brain. Now, Ethereum was a moving target, and the developers behind it are brilliant, hardworking guys. So we didn't know at that point, how fast and in what directions Ethereum would evolve. So now Ethereum has evolved a lot. There's more technical sophistication underlying it than there was in 2017. It's also gotten a bit more adoption, but the bottom line is it's slower and a lot more expensive than it was in 2017, right? Like, from a practical usage perspective, it hasn't gotten better. Now, that's pretty much because the improvement in the technical infrastructure hasn't kept up with the increase of traction. Recently, the increase in traction from the DeFi space, which is a lot of bots doing swaps and so forth. But in practice, the use of Ethereum constrains what we can do with SingularityNet, because you can't do anything where there's a lot of calls into the blockchain. And we've resolved that by designing SingularityNet so when all the AI and data interchange occurs off-chain. So, I mean, it's possible to do things, but still, when I have to give a demo of our platform, the most annoying part is waiting for the Ethereum transaction to start off the interaction with the platform, which is ridiculous, right? And I mean, and if you're looking in DeFi space, I mean, you could pay $100K of gas for a relatively moderate-sized transaction if you want it done rapidly. It's insane, right? So many people in our community have been nudging us, well, why don't you build your own blockchain? And of course, our platform team would love that. It's a fun technical challenge. On the other hand, that's very large. It's like, well, why don't you build your own computer operating system? Why don't you build your own chip? I would love to build all those things, but we have limited time and resources, right? So when I looked at all the blockchain projects out there, I saw a lot of bullshit that really shouldn't exist and is just there for pure hype reasons. I won't name any names, but everyone knows what they are, right? Some of them are run by very, very nice people. I felt, I mean, Algorand is a very nice project, and we've had a bunch of conversations with them. That's a high quality, scalable blockchain with some beautiful stuff inside it. The Toda network, which is created by my friends Tufi Saliba and Dan Tolliver, that's a beautiful ledgerless solution, but there's no like open source scalable version of the Toda protocol that's out there right now that we can use. Now, Cardano, that's really a very profoundly beautiful and well-designed code base. They use the Haskell programming language, which I've been a big fan of since 1993 or something, well before Haskell became popular. And they've taken the trouble to do like formal proofs of correctness of their Ouroboros, like the core consensus algorithms. So they've really taken a very rigorous and well-structured approach where the code is beautifully architected. The core algorithms are formally like mathematically proved to do what they're supposed to do. And I'm a math PhD originally. I put a lot of stock on that, and I feel like the thought they put into the design in terms of modularizing the design and layering it in multiple layers of abstraction, I think this will allow them to, meet the needs of the future of the blockchain world. And of course, the future of the blockchain world is in a way the future of the whole computer software world, because I think all software is going to need to be decentralized, and software is eating everything. So in a way, that's the future of the whole world, right? So if you look at it that way, you want a really solid blockchain infrastructure, because this is going to be part of the guts of the entire global economy and part of the guts of the AGI minds that are going to exceed human intelligence one day. Cardano was the only blockchain project I saw that seemed to have any prayer of having the sort of depth of thought and level of code quality you would need to really be future capable in that sense. Now, it's just, I always liked the Cardano project, but I mean, it just wasn't there in terms of being ready to port SingularityNet onto. So now their Plutus smart contract framework is running to some extent on a test net, and in Q1 of next year, it should be rolled out onto the main net. So we're now very close to the point where you can have a robust smart contract ecosystem on Cardano instead of Ethereum. But the smart Plutus is basically a variant of the Haskell language, which means it's straightforward to do formal verification that your Plutus smart contract does what it's supposed to do. And then there are many parts of the SingularityNet design that are just too awkward to do in Solidity, so we just haven't done them. And now we can do them in Cardano. So for example, there's what we call the API of APIs, which is where like an AI should be able to describe what kind of inputs it can take, what kind of outputs it can produce, and what properties it has, like say fairness properties or concurrent processing properties. You want to have a formal description language for AIs to describe their key properties to other AIs. And this is key for AIs to combine with each other in collectives to solve problems, which is a key part of SingularityNet. But getting this sort of formal description language for AIs, you can't do that in Solidity. It's just not the right sort of language. You can do it in some other language that interfaces with Solidity, but it's awkward, and it's much nicer to do that in Cardano's framework. So yeah, in sum, that partnership was really driven by technical considerations, where there are other fast blockchains like Algorand, Elrond, and a bunch of cool things coming up, but I didn't see anything else that's both reasonably fast and cheap and has the richness of abstraction in the software infrastructure to support what we want to do with SingularityNet going forward. I mean, it also happens, once I got to know Charles Hoskinson and a bunch of the Cardano tech team better, like I mean, we hit it off very well. And, these guys are very deep in math and computer science, which is really the direction that much of the SingularityNet team came out of also. So I think there's a strong synergy there on the team level as well as the software level.
So, can you tell us about the recent Kucoin hack and how the foundation has dealt with the issue?
So the KuCoin hack, this was disturbing news. It wasn't the first hack nor the last hack that will be seen in the crypto world. I mean, from a general crypto perspective, it's a red flag about two things. I mean, one, DEXs are nice, right? I mean, these are non-custodial. You're not putting your crypto on someone else's server to be hacked. Two, personally, I keep my cryptocurrency in hardware wallets, which are stored in carefully concealed locations, right? So, I mean, you shouldn't be keeping your personal crypto stash in your exchange account, right? And I mean, that's not a new lesson, right? I mean, there's some convenience to that, and there's a downside, which we're seeing here, right? I mean, because much of the value of crypto is that you don't have to do that. So I think from a broad perspective, this sort of hack doesn't even need to be there, because we should be keeping our coin in hardware wallets. We should be trading on DEXs, right? Now, from the point of view of SingularityNet, there was a bunch of AGI tokens, not not ours, like not mine or the SingularityNet Foundations, because we keep our tokens in hardware wallets. But I mean, there was a bunch of tokens from community members that were stolen in this hack, and of course that's bad. We don't like our community members to have their tokens stolen, right? So yeah, we discussed what to do about that, obviously very intensely within SingularityNet Telegram community and the SingularityNet leadership. And I mean, one option was to do a hard fork, which is what our partner Ocean Protocol and a number of other projects did. So they paused the token, then they hard fork it, and everyone who's not the thief gets a new token. And I mean, that's not a stupid thing to do. I don't think it's an unethical thing to do. And I think we and many others were sort of on the fence about whether to do that or not, which sort of means maybe neither decision is terrible or totally wrong. I mean, in the end, we felt like, you know, Ethereum did a hard fork with the original DAO hack, and that's what led to the creation of Ethereum Classic. In hindsight, I mean, at the time, I thought they shouldn't do the hard fork. In hindsight, I feel that even more strongly. Like I feel like that's an immediate emotional reaction, like, God, we're going to stop you, thief, right? But on the other hand, it may there's an argument that it's an overreaction. Like KuCoin has insurance, which they've stated, which can help them recompense any stolen tokens. They've also, since that time, said that the thief has been identified, right? So it's quite possible that law enforcement will do its job and, like, bust open the bank account or the Ethereum wallet of the thief, right? So it seemed like there are other processes that can deal with this sort of thing besides having to do a hard fork, because it wouldn't have been a horrible thing to do, but it's also an annoying precedent to set. Like, what if someone breaks into the place where my wallet is stored and somehow hacks in and finds a way to steal my crypto tokens, right? Do we hard fork because my tokens were stolen? Like, where does it end, right? It seemed better on the whole, and the balance of our community sentiment seemed to be towards staying with the decentralized ethos of the project. I mean, particularly since there's insurance in Kucoin, which should get people their tokens back.
So, how important is decentralization and blockchain technology for our future? And where do you think we'll be in terms of this in, say, the next 5 years?
I mean, decentralization is not in itself the solution to anything, but decentralization opens the door to creative solutions to many things, right? Decentralization pretty much means you don't have a dictator or an oligarchy. And and of course, there are many things that are worse than a dictator or an oligarchy, and there are also things that are better. And you can see that in national governments, like, Somalia doesn't have an effective dictator or oligarchy, but they have bands of militias with machine guns running around wreaking havoc. And they might be better off with a benevolent dictator instead of oligarchs, right? So, I mean, you could have a decentralized network, which is just chaotic and full of criminals going around doing random garbage where it's impossible to do business or build stuff. That's worse than a centralized system. On the other hand, if we can manage to build decentralized networks that are, effectively operational and fairly represent the needs and desires and inputs of a broad scope of participants in the network, then I think you're better off than with dictatorially or oligarchically structured networks. And in terms of the financial system, I mean, we can clearly see the pathologies of centralized finance, right? I mean, the centralized financial system, this consists of large Wall Street corporations and other corporations acting in close collaboration with the government financial regulators for the benefit of highly wealthy organizations and individuals, and squelching innovations that don't benefit this cabal, right? So you can see that it's not desirable, and decentralizing finance can open things up to allow broader benefit. I mean, in AI, the same is true, but there's even higher stakes, right? Like what is most AI used for on the planet now is selling, killing, spying, and gambling, where it's mostly rigged gambling, rigged in favor of large financial entities, right? And why isn't there more focus on medical AI, on AI for education, on AI for arts, on AI for scientific discovery? That has to do not with the lack of creativity on the part of the AI developers of the world, nor the lack of demand by ordinary people for these sorts of AI services. It has to do with the business models of the large corporate entities and government agencies that are controlling the AI, right? So, I mean, if a decentralized platform can help break through that and make the control of AI more heterogeneous and decentralized, I mean, that's extremely important, both in terms of benefit to people now in the next few years, and in terms of the fact that the global AI network of today, it's what's incubating the baby superhuman AGI minds of tomorrow, right?
So, is there anything in particular that you see in the next 5 years, something that's coming up in the near future that might change the current view of what's going on in that space?
I think there's a lot of pushback on centralized internet companies for using people's personal data, to sell them stuff they don't need, to brainwash them with political ideologies and so forth. So I'm thinking in the next 5 years, we're going to see a decentralized AI-based sort of consumer internet thing, and I don't know what form it will take. I mean, we have things like Facebook and TikTok and Google search and Twitter and so forth, and these are all ultimately run by centralized companies in ways that foster essentially brainwashing of the mass population by a corporate government elite network. And if you had like an everyday social media platform that operated on the decentralized basis, that will be quite transformative, right? And we're not building that in SingularityNet, but we're building the AI backend for that. And if the tools get robust enough, then it could become a smaller project for some small group of young hackers to build the next Facebook or TikTok, but on a decentralized back end. Because you look at this whole TikTok, Chinese government, US government thing, like what are they fighting about? They're fighting partly about the AI algorithms that recommend videos to people, and partly about the machine learning models trained using those algorithms. So they're fighting about, like, does Chinese government or US government control the machine learning model that models and predicts the mind and actions of teenage Americans, right? And so what seems to be coming out of it is, oh, we don't want Chinese government to own that model, so Walmart will have it, right? So great, that's what we need. We need Walmart to own the machine learning model of every teenage American. So Amazon doesn't have it because Trump doesn't like Amazon or something. I mean, these models of the mind and behavior of American teenagers should be owned and controlled in a transparent way by these American teenagers, not by one or another government or mega corporation. And we now have a lot of the infrastructure that would allow that. Like you could build a decentralized TikTok or something even more innovative, back ending on SingularityNet. SingularityNet can do all the recommendation and prediction of your tastes. And then, because we have strong encryption and blockchain behind the scenes, you own the model of yourself, not any government or company. Now, of course, building some decentralized successor to TikTok or Facebook and getting traction for it is a whole other thing. But at least having the secure, privacy respecting, decentralized AI back end for that is nice. Like it wasn't there 3 years ago, right?
So, what do you believe are the most innovative projects in the blockchain space? Are there any protocol that you're most passionate about?
I've mentioned obviously SingularityNet and Cardano, which I'm very excited about. I think the Toda protocol created by Tufi Sliva and Dan Tolliver, this is revolutionary in that it lets you do sort of secure peer-to-peer messaging and data exchange without any ledger. Like there's no distributed ledger, there's no replicated ledger. It's a purely ledgerless solution, and that's very, very cool. It's still at an earlier stage of development, but the math makes sense, and there's some nice prototypes. I would love to see that plugged into Cardano somehow, which could be quite interesting also. I think I've been a big fan of Ocean Protocol for a long time. They're sort of that's a tokenized marketplace for data rather than for AI, and they've introduced something now together with Balancer called the IDO, the initial data offering. So you can take like your DNA data or your video viewing data encrypted, and you can put it online in the Ocean data wallet, and then a token will be created, which is like a Ben's DNA token or a Ben's video history token, and then you can have people pay that token to utilize your data for training their machine learning algorithms or something. But there can also be like a DeFi ecosystem on that token corresponding to your data set. So I thought that's quite interesting because it brings together AI, big data, and decentralized finance in a way that's quite cool, right? So I think there's going to be a lot more things along those lines with creative uses of derivatives to incentivize various AI and data related operations. And yeah, we should see more of that.
So maybe you've already spoke to a little bit of this, but what do you think the future looks like for cryptocurrency?
The future is going to be very rich and diverse, right? That's sort of like asking what's the future for computers. I mean, they're going to be used all over the place. I mean, Bitcoin seems to have its place as an investable asset along there with gold and silver and so forth. I mean, it's no longer cutting edge as software, but I mean, gold is not cutting edge either, right? And you buy it, it has a certain increase in value and a certain correlation with other financial instruments. So I mean, I'm not dumping any of my Bitcoin at the moment. I mean, I think that as interesting from a finance standpoint as a hedge against other more traditional investments. I think as far as the use of cryptocurrency for just plain vanilla currency transactions, it's a little less clear to me because I think every national currency is going to go crypto, right? Like you have e-ruble, you have e-RMB, you'll have the e-dollar and the e-euro and so forth. And I mean, blockchain as a software tool, maybe ledgerless blockchains like Toda, I mean, these can and will be used underneath like digital encryption-based versions of national currencies. But it seems like national governments are going to want to control and monitor flows of traditional currencies, right? That's one of the things they do. It's key to their economies. So I'm not sure that the vision that Facebook has had or that many in the crypto space have had of a nation state free cryptocurrency money having a dominant role. I'm not sure that governments are going to let that happen, although they will adopt those technologies underlying their electronic currencies. But I think there's going to be a tremendous flourishing of innovation, right? I mean, tokens can be so many things, and smart contracts can be so many things beyond tokens. And the categories of utility and security and derivative are archaic and don't describe the flexibility of what can be done with cryptographic manipulations and exchanges of value. So I think along the side of Bitcoin as an investable entity and blockchain as a tool used by countries underlying their currencies, you're going to see a flourishing of all sorts of different modes of value exchange, which will include utility tokens. It'll include decentralized finance constructions that are unclassifiable as to whether they're utility or security or derivative or what they are. And it will include smart contracts mediating exchange in ways that aren't focused on quantification of value even. Like you could have a multi-party barter network, which I've called an offer network. Like I'll give some data to party A if some other party does some analysis for me or something. So you can have non-binary exchange networks mediated by constraint satisfaction algorithms. I mean, I think there's going to be an incredible flourishing of possibilities which will occur in the finance space, but also say in the medical space. Like what's your payment for contributing your DNA data to some medical research project? Well, maybe it's not just that you get money. Maybe it's that your grandmother gets admitted to some clinical trial for a medical issue she has, right? So there's a whole lot of ways the cryptographic exchange of data, AI services, and value can happen. What we need for that is, smart contract languages that can be formally checked for correctness, that are harder to hack, and that aren't so expensive and slow to use, right? And I think the Plutus language from Cardano is going to be one example there. There may be others that come out, and Ethereum too eventually may get its act together, and then Solidity may deliver also on its promise of being a significant player in the infrastructure of the emerging world computer.
All right, so one thing that we like to do on this show is play a little game of word association with our guests. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to say a word, and I'd like you to respond with like the first thing that comes to your head, maybe 4 or 5 words maximum. So yeah, what immediately comes to mind. So we'll start off with decentralization.
Anarchism, anarcho-socialism, freedom, peace, love, and chaos.
Right. Ethereum.
First comes to mind probably Vitalik Buterin and Vlad Zamfir, and slow, overpriced, and pioneering.
Cryptocurrency.
I think innovation and baby as well. I mean, I think it's in the infant stage of development.
Bitcoin.
This is like the great grandfather of cryptocurrencies, so that's what popped into my head.
And artificial intelligence.
AI is the future and the only hope for saving intelligence on Earth from self-destruction.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a genuine pleasure speaking with you. And if people want to continue following you or find out more about what's going on with SingularityNET, is there any place that they should be looking?
SingularityNet.io is our website, and you can find out there how to follow us on Twitter and join our Telegram groups and sign up for our newsletter and so forth.
All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Ben Goertzel, and we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.